the market is not easy. It's going up and down, but I get to talk to you personally. I get to talk to you on a daily basis, right? But I'm pumped because you know how to work these markets. You guys just took a game today. Nothing's coming out easy, but you guys did a good job. And I'm pumped to share that with people because trading is not easy. There's no magic indicator that you can follow that just makes stocks go up. You got to be good at this. You got to use a bunch of different things. Here's a little bit of agenda of what we want to cover. We want to cover the hood trade review because you guys just closed out a game this morning. That's killer. We want to talk Bitcoin and cryptos because we're seeing a lot of action there. Bitcoin is rolling higher. And then we want to talk about some of the themes that we've covered week over week, sort of a bull market, like the rotation out of Mag 7. We want to talk about semis, semiconductors, where that's going, and then also short squeezes, because that's another area that you're starting to see some good opportunity. But I'll say it one more time now that we got a few more people on the call. I'm proud of what you're doing here, Gunnar. You are very good at this. I was once a big loser. That's hard for everyone to believe, but I was not good at trading. And the way that I've learned from you and a lot of the people around Power Press, I've learned a lot, but nothing when it comes to trading in and out and like a motionless, very regimented, repeatable system. You've got it going on. So do you want to cover hood first? Because that's a fun thing to cover just for the group and say, hey, here's what that trade looked like. Here's what we did. We cashed it in this morning. And then if some folks are in the chat, you can type in if you made some money on that trade and everything, because we're proud to put that through. So, but you take it from here, Gunnar. Where do you want to go?
All right, well, I'll share my screen and we can start talking about hood because this was a fun trade. It's nice to see these trades work out like they do, and it's nice to see them work out in a way that's a little bit less stressful than some of the other trends that we've been experiencing on the market today. We've seen a lot of pretty wild swings. You know, you've seen what happened during NVIDIA earnings week and how crazy things got, where we had the big sell-off in those mega cap semiconductors, and then they got bought right back up once those earnings numbers were released. This was a much more smooth sailing type of trade. It's the type of trade that I really like to get into. And I call these types of trades earnings drifters. A lot of people call them that. That's nothing that I made up. But what we had here was a situation where Robinhood, a beaten down stock that nobody liked, it was absolutely pummeled during the 2022 bear market and really actually had a lot of trouble getting back on its feet back in 2023 as well, once market conditions started improving. We had a situation where they beat on earnings and investors liked the news. The stock gapped up and ran 13% on the day after earnings. And then that triggered a bunch of follow-up buying and a lot of FOMO in the markets as more and more people started to realize that the narrative was changing around this particular stock. We'll zoom out in a minute to take a look at the bigger picture. But right now, I want to concentrate on these bars that happened after the earnings announcement. We had the stock hold this gap, and that was the critical movement that I was watching in this. And I'll draw a quick line for you right here so you can see what I'm talking about. You can see how the day after earnings, hood gapped higher and held this mark. Yes, there were some intraday dips below this 1350-ish level right here, we'll call it. But for the most part, buyers were stepping in every time this stock dipped and were continuing to push it higher. That told me that we were entering a new type of regime for this stock. The selling pressure that came right here in early January that knocked the stock back down here following the melt-up rally wasn't going to last. We were going to see people probably chase and begin to push it higher, and that's exactly what happened. They started ramping up their buying and chasing after it. Friday was a very important day. As I was saying last week in the chat, if this thing can close above the 1420s, 1430s, it's going to really rip, and that's exactly what happened. On Friday, it pushed toward the close, closed near its highs. That's always a bullish sign heading into the weekend right there. Closed right there near its highs, then gapped higher on Monday and really ran, gave us a gain of almost 8%, and then some follow through earlier this morning. I always say we want to sell these type of plays into strength. Remember, we're just trying to take as much of this gain as we possibly can, as much of this breakout move. Eventually, this is going to have to rest. It can't continue to go straight up every day. I know NVIDIA has been doing that, but let's ignore that for a minute. Most stocks can't just keep going straight up every single day, and we have to respect that there's going to be some sort of consolidation, some sort of pullback here. And that might be what we're seeing taking place here later in the morning as some of the buying dries up at the higher prices here as it bumps into 16 bucks. I'm not really sure just yet. We'll have to wait and see how the day ends. But for the most part, a nice 3-day move, these nice gaps higher right here, they give you a great opportunity to take these swing trades off the table and to take those quick profits. I mean, just a few days ago, this was kind of a break even trade. We were kind of waiting for that breakout to really extend. And then when it did, boom, we got a situation where we were sitting on triple digit gains, and then it pushes closer to 200% gains earlier this morning. Should have been able to get out in that neighborhood somewhere right there. Beautiful trade. Now, you
What
have
was
to,
the total time? What was the total time on that trade too? How many days did you guys have it?
I don't know how many days exactly. It was a
Okay.
little bit over a week, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, that's killer.
yeah. But I mean, what's important here is that we're keeping it in perspective with our time frame. I'm not bearish on this stock at all right here, even if it starts to settle in. I've told you guys back when I recommended it that I own a few shares in a longer term account right here. I think it's an overlooked stock at the moment. If we zoom out and we see what we're dealing with here, we have a stock that IPO'd back in 2021 during the Wall Street Bets message board heyday right here and immediately started plummeting. I mean, you can see here it extended toward 85 bucks during its first couple weeks on the market, crashed into 2022 and descended into the abyss right here and hasn't done much since then. Well, right now, it appears to be coming out of this big multi-year base formation. I believe that, you know, the shares have all exchanged hands. We have a whole new shareholder base in here. Anybody who bought, most folks who bought during the IPO days have probably given up and moved on. And now we're seeing the narrative begin to change with this stock and people beginning to see the value of Robinhood. I think that the narrative will continue to change because I believe that price leads those type of narratives. So as the stock continues to break out and push toward 2-3 year highs, I think we're going to start hearing a lot more from the financial media about like, oh, this overlooked stock. Look at this. No one's talking about Robinhood. Why not? Why aren't they talking about crypto and its involvement in there? Why aren't they talking about all the names of all the retail traders that are involved in this stock? I really think that this could be the beginning of something big. However, as swing traders, as short-term traders, and putting a call option on this, we needed to respect the fact that it's probably going to run out of gas at some point here, and it's going to need to consolidate either mark time or it's going to need to pull back a little bit. And this would be a great spot to take some money off the table, to take our gains and run. And then, you know, we can always keep this on our watch list and come back to it as it sets back up again, because there's no rule that says you can't dip back into the well and buy these stocks over and over again. Matt, you know that I have my favorite stocks that I like to trade. I mean, how many times did I trade Mara or Palantir over the past couple of years? The stocks that we learn how they move, we get to know them pretty intimately, and then we know how we can get into them and trade them a little bit better. We know what makes them tick and what they respond to, and they just turn out to be great trading stocks. Maybe this will become one of those in 2024.
Yeah. Do you want to, we probably have some new readers on the call. The other thing I wanted to say, Gunner has a hard out, I believe around 11:40 today. If anybody wants to, if anyone's new on the call or long-term people or whatever, if anyone wants to hang around, I'll hang around for another 10 or 15 minutes. I'll answer any, if you've got any paradigm FAQ questions, or the other thing is I could take a look around the website too, just in case someone's not familiar with it, like how the chat works and that kind of stuff. So just FYI for later. But one of the questions from Cynthia in the chat, maybe this is something to answer now. We could do it. We could go through it quick because this isn't a super answerable question. It's just, but like, how do you know when to buy and sell on something like this? You kind of went through it with Hood, right? Like you saw the setup that you liked, you saw enough confidence that you go in, and then I guess that's enough on the buy side. But like selling, just reemphasize that you're more leaning on like the bigger picture that you've taken a good gain. Like there's not really anything in the chart you're seeing. Like how do you think about selling that trade this morning?
Well, a trade like this, again, and we're looking for short-term gains. So if I'm getting a gain in the short term, that's substantial. And in this case, it definitely was. When something's pushing triple-digit gains, 200% or so, I'm going to think about locking those in some way or another. When I look at this chart like this, I begin to see a stock that's going a bit parabolic. We already had a big earnings gap here where it gapped up 13%. And then after a little bit of consolidation, it's pushing higher here once again. It feels to me like in the very short term, it's getting a little bit stretched. Also, if we zoom out and we begin looking at this bigger base that it's formed, it's bumping up against this $16 area, this high 15s, low $16 area, which was an area of resistance back in February of 22, April of 22, when the market was going down. That seemed to be an area where a lot of sellers were coming into. Just judging by those couple parameters right there, I felt that it was a good time to take some money off the table in this trade. And again, a lot of this comes from experience. It comes from looking at the charts and intimately learning how these companies tend to react, how their stock tends to react. I don't know if it's going to stop here. Nobody knows if it's going to stop here. This was just an opportune time to take that money off the table and take it run. And again, we had calls that were expiring in mid-March, and March 1st is what, Friday?
Yeah.
So we were getting into a point where we were going to see these calls start to burn a little bit, and we need to get out of the way and take these gains while we can. And it just was a prudent spot to take the money off the table. And again,
Yeah.
like that's what I'm here for. I'm here to lead by this type of experience and to show you these type of things. I'm not going to be perfect every time. Nobody is, but we need to take those opportunities. And as the longtime folks who've been members with me for a long time will tell you, I love to sell into morning strength when we have some of those big pops in the morning on our plays, when they've been extending, when they've been gapping higher over several days. Love to take that money off the table because there's going to be that lull eventually, and then you're going to leave some of those gains on the table if you wait too long.
Yeah, and that's what I like. I mean, another way to say the same thing is like you're not none of this is gambling really. It's much more regimented. The buy price and where you wanted to come in is because of what you saw on the chart. Then the chart does what it does. No one knows what it's going to do day over day. But why sit on a 200% gain? Because
Right.
the next 200 or the loss of all your 200 is technically at this point, because you're in no man's land on the chart, it's all kind of a gamble. And Greg doesn't like to gamble. Why not take 200%? Yeah, I think that's a great way to say it. Um, let's see. Did we have any other questions on this? Yeah, nothing else on Hood. The only other thing we could cover if we wanted to, and again, someone asked this a couple weeks ago. They were asking about this top trades call because sometimes this one's not going to be posted on the YouTube. We just didn't have it up and running, and we've got. I want to do that site walkthrough later. So this one is a little bit more of just the trading desk folks on here. But this call on a Tuesday at 11, these are always sort of free. They're open for everyone. This isn't where you're going to get that always buy and sell information like we have in the chat on a daily basis. But today we've got some new members in the group. We kind of wanted to cover it a little bit more. So Gunnar, while we're talking trades, do you want to talk AMD?
Yeah, definitely. We can talk that. So
Because there
AMD,
might be some people that are new, and obviously, if you weren't in 11 days ago, you didn't buy the Hood trade. Hood made 200% in 11 days, killer trade.
right.
And again, you don't have a lot of trades on. There's just two, right? One just closed now, so you've got one more trade on AMD. Is AMD still kind of in the buy that you had from last week in that range? And then, if someone's new, should they be getting in there, or do they just kind of hold tight and wait for another setup?
Right. I still like AMD here. It's still well within our range to buy those puts. And I do like downside action in semiconductors right now. Someone asked the question earlier in the chat, and I think that's one of the big themes we're seeing start to play out in the market right now. I don't know if it's going to follow through, but it certainly feels like we're getting into the environment where a lot of these mega caps that have really, really extended the market higher and the semiconductors, which have just gone straight up, I believe those are going to need to take a rest sooner rather than later. We saw the big earnings reaction from NVIDIA, and now it's cooling off a little bit. These extensions have just been absolutely insane. There's been a huge chase on a lot of these semiconductor stocks, the mega caps right here, and also RANds. And, AMD is a good company. I'm not really, I'm not trying to talk trash on AMD here. However, it has not produced the type of gains that NVIDIA has, that SMCI has, that some of these other huge, huge movers have produced over the past several weeks. I think that the interest, the hot money in these trades is going to move on to greener pastures. They're going to rotate into other names. And I think we're already seeing that this week. We're starting to see some short squeezes pop up. Yesterday, the EVs were popping. All the stuff that hadn't been doing well lately, the growth names, those were starting to move a little bit higher. So I think folks are attempting to rotate back into those stocks and push them higher. And I think that's going to be at the detriment of some of these Magnificent Seven stocks, I think it's going to be to the detriment of Nvidia. I think there's going to be a situation here where people realize that, hey, the easy money's been made in this Nvidia chart. It can't possibly go too much higher without some sort of reset. We did see the beginnings of a reset up until earnings right here, and then you saw the big reaction after that, and then it kind of flamed out the day after, and it's been sort of leaking lower ever since then. I show you NVIDIA first because I think that's an important chart to put this whole semiconductor trade idea into context. Because when we look at AMD, AMD's been lagging over the past few days. It has been unable to get over this hump at 180 right here. It has moved off the lows today, but it did see some selling here toward the open. And that would be three. If we do get lower right here, it's going to be 3 straight days of selling where it's stuck in this choppy range. That could benefit our trade as well. If we have a situation, even where even where AMD doesn't just flat out crash on us, we could have a situation where it needs to revisit the bottom of this channel that it's made right here, because every time it's come up here into the low 180s, sellers have come in and started selling the stock. You saw it here when it went a little bit parabolic at the end of January, when it was riding on the coattails of these other semiconductors, and it needed to move a quick $20 lower. It attempted it again, couldn't get over 180, attempted it again here earlier this month and couldn't get over it, attempted it again, and this is where we got in on a short play right here. So I know this is a little bit different than some of the breakout plays that we've been trading in the past, but this type of mean reversion play in a sector that I feel is completely overextended could really work in our favor. Now, ideally, and I'm not saying this will happen, but ideally, if we have a situation in AMD where it does get a quick whoosh lower down here to the bottom and then starts to crack below this level right here, I think we could see an additional momentum move to the downside right there. And that would be more of a primary breakdown out of this consolidation right here. There's no guarantee that that's going to happen. This could just continue to bounce around and ping pong between 160 and 180. We're just going to have to see what the market gives us. But as of right now, I like the prospects of this stock being unable to get back above 180 and to continue to leak lower here while the hot money disperses and moves into other areas of the market, because we're seeing all this other action here, like we've discussed. We're seeing Bitcoin post a massive breakout. And I think someone already mentioned this in the chat. Look at what CLSK has done. I was just talking about this the other day, saying that, like, okay, we got a nice flag going here. We're consolidating after this big move higher. Is it going to break out above this? And yesterday, it gapped just a little bit and then just immediately blasted higher. It was one of those trades that was just so hard to attempt to grab the tiger by the tail and catch that big move. Yesterday, it was up 23%. And then you see what happens today. You see the filled in candle right here, because it opened down here in the low 20s. It pushed up toward $23, and now it's lost all that move already. So it's beginning to reset. So I'm glad we didn't attempt to chase this particular play right here, but you can see how difficult it is to get into some of these super, super hot names when crypto is just absolutely flying. Because if we look at a chart of Bitcoin, I'll pull that up for you right here. I mean, this breakout is clear as day. Remember back when we were talking about all this choppy action we were enduring here during the false breakout with the ETF approvals, and then the false breakdown immediately following that. Very typical Bitcoin, where it tends to head fake in both directions before it really gets going. And then it really started ramping up here in early February. And after a nice tight consolidation here, we can see it again beginning to extend. I don't think we've seen the mid 50s in Bitcoin since what? November of 2021. So this is a pretty important move right here. I would say that nothing's off the table. We all know how fast crypto can really get going. And so I'm going to keep all the crypto miners on my watch list for now, but I really want those tighter consolidation entries. I know we're not always going to get them, but I'm very reluctant to attempt to chase up here, because we all know that Bitcoin could do what it sometimes does, which is break out and then completely retrace that move before shooting higher again. And I just don't want to risk getting stuck into a trade where we're just reaching higher for some type of call right there, and then immediately it's out of reach and we end up with a big loss on our hands. And so we really need to play these, very smart. We need to try to pinpoint these moves. If we can catch them, that's great. If not, we can just wait for the next one. That's the best part about the market. We could sit around dwelling on, like, oh man, I wish I should have done this, I wish I should have done that. But market's open tomorrow. There's going to be new opportunities tomorrow. There's going to be opportunities once Bitcoin consolidates again. There's going to be opportunities when Mara and CLSK, once those consolidate. So we're going to have other chances to buy these stocks, and they're just going to be as explosive as they were this time the next time around.
Yeah. And a reminder, I say this every week now because we're talking about CleanSpark, but I hold CleanSpark, the stock, just for normal disclosure stuff. But it is true. Like I'm holding the stock and I'm not anxious to get out or anything like that. But you're talking swing trades and options. You got to be
Right.
right, and you can't have a giant red candle go against you, or the whole trade goes south.
Whole trade
Um,
could explode within a matter of an
yeah.
hour.
So again, not gambling here, looking for good setups in an up and down market. Even though CleanSpark was heading straight up for a while or had those significant moves. But yeah, talking Bitcoin, the chart that's on the screen now, man, oh man. I mean, Bitcoin's rolling. I'm I dare say it, right? And this is not I'm not Gunner, so I'm not the chart master, but gosh, you start talking historically and you start looking at moves and what a potential move from here could be. Like
Yeah.
we ran up to 75K in 2021. Like this is, we went 20,000 in 2018, 75,000 in 2021, and now all of a sudden it's like setting up again. That could be,
It's not just Bitcoin this time. It's going down the cap scale to the smaller cryptos. Ethereum's break. This is Ethereum right here, which
oof,
is arguably
yeah,
an even cleaner breakout, moving from 2,200 to 3,200 right here. I would say that. I mean, I'm not saying go out and buy it all right now, but I do think that if you're holding on to crypto right now, this is the time to white knuckle it and just ride it because we have the halvening coming up, and I hesitate to say that these news events are super important to the price, but they in Bitcoin world they seem to be. This seems to be a really big deal. I'm not a pure crypto guy. I play price action, but that's coming up soon, right, Matt? I don't know the exact date,
yeah.
but
That's coming in April, right? And then I think it's like April 20th, somewhere around there. The other thing is Ethereum has, and I'm not going to butcher it because I don't really know what's happening in Ethereum. But James Altucher and Chris Campbell, they do, and they're talking
yeah,
about this. I think on March 13th, Ethereum has a structural change that's happening. It's not a halving, but it's something that has the ability that could be a pretty large catalyst for Ethereum. Um, and I know James, he loves Ethereum. He's been saying that for years.
yeah,
If it's Bitcoin versus Ethereum, he wants Ethereum. So, we're probably, I would assume at the trading desk, Gunner, you're going to be more talking about the miners and then
yeah.
ETFs and playing this in the market base, whereas James and Chris Campbell, they're looking at coins. They're in, they've got a lot of different things going on, but this is the active place for trading in the markets.
Yeah, I'll be playing it through stocks, but I mean, you can see here, I think another point in Ethereum's favor is the fact that it needs to play catch up, and I think it can. I think we can think of it like a silver gold type situation that if we're in a real bull market for crypto, I mean, Ethereum topped out closer to 5K back in 2021, and it's only 3,200 now. It's got a ways to go compared to Bitcoin. So if this thing really goes parabolic, it might just keep going.
Yeah.
And again,
And
that
there's
wouldn't
no
shock.
the Bitcoin ETF that happened on January 10th, the approval from the SEC, that same process, we don't know the dates yet. That same process is happening for Ethereum. That has to
Yeah,
get approval, and then they have to get an ETF going. So that could be another catalyst. So you got Snake Bites 007 wrote in and said that I think it's the Den Coon. Again, I don't want to butcher that, but it's an event for Ethereum. You get that plus a spot ETF or something.
yeah,
Again, it's just free headlines and then people learn about it. There are a lot of people that don't know what Ethereum is. That might
sure.
sound crazy. We're kind of in the know. There are a lot of people that don't even know what it is.
No, I think you're right. I think our noses are a little close to the screen, and if you talk to a lot of folks, like they're aware of the idea of crypto, maybe the term, and Bitcoin, but that's about it. Everything else
Yep.
is just like completely foreign to a lot of people that aren't involved in this stuff. So yeah, I mean, like if it really catches on, it could really run. Um, and I think we're in that type of market now. It's as amazing as it is to me, we had the big disbelief rally in November, December, and now it feels like the speculators are coming in and they feel emboldened in this environment. I mean, we've seen what's happened with these huge stocks. I mean, it's not easy to get that type of a rally in a stock like Nvidia. It's not like that's just being manipulated by small retail traders on message boards out there, on Wall Street Bets or something like that. These are big, huge FOMO rallies that are happening. And now it certainly is feeling like that's starting to trickle down into a lot of the other stocks. We're starting to see short squeezes. Matt, I might pull up one of your favorite squeezies, Carvana. I mean, look at this
Here
guy.
we go.
Here we go. And Carvana, again, the best thing that a stock can do is almost go bankrupt. And Carvana's proving that. I mean, not if you owned it up here at $350, but for right now, there's a huge shift in what people think of this. Everybody thought it was a zero back here in January of last year when it was trading for $5. Well, it's almost at $80 now, and you can see the earnings right here, which came in Thursday evening. We had the gap higher, and this is another earnings drifter. Remember the hood trade? It's kind of the same idea right here, where this one's really not even consolidating that much. It tailed off both afternoons, Friday and Monday. But today, gapped higher and is pushing up toward its highs, and it's up 13%. There are folks that are squeezing the heck out of these plays. And when I talk about short squeezes, for those who don't know, I'm talking about there's a ton of people who are short this stock. People are betting against this stock right here. And as it pushes toward new highs, they're going to get margin called, or they're going to have to sell. They're going to have to buy their shares to cash out. And that buying pressure to get out of their shorts just snowballs on itself and creates these squeeze events. And I think that's might be what we're seeing in something like Carvana today. Incredibly popular trading stock. We've looked at it before. Tough to catch, tough to time. You can see here this little secondary breakout right here where it popped and then gave it all back. That's why. That's another example. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds of teaching today, but that's another good example about why I take profits on strength in my swing trades. I don't get too greedy when I see these big gaps happening day after day. Eventually, it's going to slow down, and you might get a move like this where it totally retraces in the weeks following, and then all your gains go poof. You don't want that. So, shorter term time frames, you want to grab what you can from these moves, but this feels like it's setting up for something else. And if we zoom back out, it looks like it has room to go. I mean, is this going to go to $100 before? I don't know, but it's entirely possible because I do think that these trades are kind of creeping back in to the zeitgeist here, and the FOMO is real, man. The FOMO is real because we have a situation where the mega caps have been, they were dragging the market higher, and people are kind of getting out of those right now. Look at Apple. We've been talking about Apple these past few weeks, and it's just leaking closer and closer toward this 180 mark where it looks like it's going to break down even further right here. Not a great look. Tesla was kind of saved by the bell yesterday, but it had a negative earnings reaction, but it had been looking like it was breaking down over the past several months. It tried to get out of that situation during the melt up in December, but it failed ultimately. And then breaking below 200 was pretty ugly. It's kind of sitting at that mark right now. We'll see what it does to close this gap, this earnings gap right here, where it was down 12% on those earnings. But not super bullish in the long term, but it is perking up a little bit. And those are probably new 20-day highs right there that it posted earlier this morning. But still, again, not a lot of momentum, not a lot of people filing into these trades. And with semiconductors kind of teetering here near their highs and starting to roll over a little bit, they're not crashing, obviously, but they don't have the momentum they had a few weeks ago. I think folks are moving on to other stocks right here. And so we need to start looking down the cap scale. We need to start looking at these growth stocks. We need to start opening back up the ARC files. ARC has been messy. We've talked about that, how it looked like it was going to run, and then it's been kind of dogging us and being above 50, below 50, and now it's trying to shoot above this mark. What if this firms up and we start to see this really start to move here? We got a big base forming here again on these unwanted growth stocks right here. I think that we could get some really nice tradable moves off of this, and we don't have to marry these stocks. We're just getting in and getting out. This isn't a situation where I'm making massive predictions about, like, I think this stock is going to double. I think this is going to be the next big thing. I think this stock's going to be in the NASDAQ 100 soon. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with momentum and what's happening in the market right now and whether or not we can take advantage of it.
Yeah, absolutely. One question, we'll put a bow on the AMD trade. Someone was asking, hey, can you go over the details of it? That kind of thing. So again, none of this should be considered. I didn't do our normal disclaimers, but obviously all investing has risk. And then anything me and Greg say, shouldn't be considered personalized investment advice. So on this thing, we're not telling you what to do with your money. I think Robin asked in, right? That's the beauty of our publishing business. We publish ideas, you do what you want. Gunner, you guys recommended the March 15th $170 puts for
Yes,
AMD. You
yes,
guys got in. I believe the official price that you've called was $4.05 for that option. I believe it's trading. I looked at the portfolio. It looks like it's trading below that right now or around
yes,
there. So
yeah.
that's
It's
going to
lower.
be up. Yeah, that'll be up to you at home. If you're new and you just came in, that stock is below the buy up to, and it just, the trade just happened. So that's your discretion, but that would be one you could get in alongside of Gunner right now. You'd actually be getting a little bit better price than everyone got on the buy price. And then
Yeah.
he's watching that stock. Obviously, we're looking for some sort of a retracement back down to that lower line there, and that would be the way to play it. The 170 calls, 170
And
puts.
and you'll definitely get a better price than me because I had to chase a little bit because I have to wait to let you guys get in there, which is great. I want you to get a better price than me. But again, in case you're not familiar with how I'm doing this, I keep a shorter leash on my downside plays because downside moves happen fast. And if they're not happening, then it might be time to make a run for it. If this starts poking above 180, even a little bit, and moving into this area right here, I'm gonna jump ship and run. And I'm just going to assume it's not going to work for us right away because again, we don't have a lot of time. We have a situation where March expiration is on the 15th, I believe. And so the clock is ticking. This needs to work soon or it's going to work never. And we're just going to hop off and we're going to move on to the next opportunity. That's just how it works. Um, either way, as long as we're smart about it and we know what our risk is and we're willing to cut and run, then we're good to go. Sometimes we're going to get caught up in moves that don't work out. Somebody was asking about the Roblox trade. That's a post earnings drifter that drifted the wrong way, and this is what happens. Looked like it was going to break out. It gapped. I took it as a drifter higher, and then it just leaked lower consistently. Trade was declared dead somewhere along in here, and we were kind of waiting to see if we could get a little bit of a bounce to maybe make up some of the losses. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. This is leaking lower no matter what the market's doing. It seems like nobody wants to be involved in this one. And so it just didn't get off the ground. But again, it was the same idea, the same type of signal where we're looking for a drift. I was looking for it to possibly crack above 46.90, 47 and make a run for it if we got a good drift higher. A lot of these stocks were doing that. This one just so happened to not do it. And that's what happens. Markets are markets. And we'll move on and we'll do things. We'll book like 200% on hood and we'll do some more of those and we'll move on and it won't be that big a deal. But as long as we're taking these signals and realizing what we got and realizing when the market moves against us and we're sizing our positions reasonably and we're not going all in on every single one, we're going to be just fine. And those losers are not going to affect us in the long term because that's what it's all about. We're grinding out these moves. And in the long term, in the weeks and the months, and the years, we'll let the losers pile up and the winners will outnumber them and the winning gains will vastly outnumber the losing gains and we'll be good to go.
Yep. And Gunnar, I'll give you your 5 minute warning here. If you've got
Yep.
he's got an appointment, so he's gonna, I believe you need to be out of here at 11:40. We got 5 minutes left, so I'll let you roll for 5 minutes. Anybody that wants to stick around, I'll answer questions. Again, I'm not the trader. I'm not going to analyze charts for everybody. But if you're new and you want to see how to look at the trading desk and how to do that, and if you've got any general questions, I can go through and answer those as well. So Gunnar, I'll give you the 5 minutes wherever we want to go with it. Anything else you like? Any stocks? Any trades setting up week over week? Anything to cover?
Yeah, I think we really need to look at the ARC names. Like I said, I think that aside from crypto and maybe crypto and the tech growth stocks kind of go hand in hand here, but I think we're going to be in a situation where these stocks really start to push. If they start catching, then I definitely want to start trading them. And, we just have to be on our toes and aware that these market conditions kind of come and go. We'll have ebbs and flows. Sometimes people are going to want to go into these stocks heavy, and then they're going to sell them and they're going to go right back down. But even so, they respond so well to these momentum moves that I want to keep them on the radar. I know some of them aren't looking good. And so we are getting some separation in these stocks. I think Unity just announced earnings and is not doing too well. They're down like 9% today. So this is definitely a name that we want to avoid, but it hasn't been looking good anyway. Zoom is another Kathy Wood special. It actually gapped higher on earnings today. Holy guacamole. When was the last time we had Zoom gap up on earnings? Maybe Matt knows. Um, but this is definitely an outlier to me when I start seeing stuff like this happen because this stock's been a dog. Zoom has not played nice. Every time I've tried to play it on the long side, it hasn't worked out. It continues to sort of leak lower. And when I see bases form on stocks like this that have sort of melted down from their highs, and obviously this was a huge pandemic stock. We all know the whole story about that. But after this melted down from being $300 plus back in 2021, it's attempted to bottom out and failed every single time. This is not a constructive base until it really starts curving up and showing us some higher lows there on the other side. You can see how we haven't gotten to that point yet with a stock like this. It's still getting beaten down. Maybe this is a change of character right here. Maybe this is the start of something and this gap will hold. It's been all over the place today. You can see how wide ranging this candle is, as low as 65 and as high as $69. And it's currently trading around 66.50. But the opinions on this stock vary widely, obviously. There's a lot of bears involved in something like this. I would want this to firm up before I really wanted to take a stab at it. I wanted to see it get up here more into the $74 range to really prove that it's coming out of it. But again, this is not the type of base we want to look for. It doesn't look like a big bowl. You want to see a big old saucer on these. And you can see here how there's a nice big left side of it and the right side is still missing. All that means is this thing can still continue to sort of float into oblivion and continue to push lower right here because it's not seeing the change in hands. It's not seeing the bulls step in. People aren't stepping in and buying it at higher prices. That's the sign that a stock is doing well. When people are moving in and they are grabbing shares at higher and higher prices, they're not waiting it to go back down again. So this thing is still range bound. But again, I think there's a lot of ARK names that could be doing well. I think there's a lot of very popular tradable stocks that could be looking well. I'm going to be looking at things like Carvana, names like Palantir. We've talked a lot about Palantir. We've traded Palantir very successfully in the past. This thing is flagging here. It is not the most beautiful flag in the world. We can see how it fell off a cliff and it's retracing right here. But it does feel like something has changed from back in the fall. One of my main concerns with this stock was it looked like it was going to go and really rally along with the rest of the market in November. You remember back over in October, nobody wanted anything to do with anything in the markets. Everybody thought this market was going to crash. And then heading into November, things just shot way higher. Palantir went straight down into the beginning of January. And then it took a big earnings announcement right here on the 5th to get it to gap up and run higher, 30% in a day. And then it followed that up with another 7% gain. What a monster. I mean, maybe this is changing things for it. I'm going to need to see a lot more from it, though. I don't want to get involved in it if it's going to be messy. That's the main thing, because you guys know what options can do to you. If you get in a situation where a stock is messy, you can be right in the long term about the direction of it, but you can still lose money because in the short term, you get chewed up, and that's not what we want. We want to see this post a much clearer type of breakout, and this kind of hook lower, and then the recovery right there kind of has me worried. Long term, I think it's pretty good. I think it's a pretty good idea. I think that a lot of people are getting wise to the theme, but we're going to need to see it set up a little bit better. But I think trades like this, and I have a screen up right now where I'm just doing a very simple, like high short interest screen. We can see the big moves. There's a lot of stocks that we've talked about. Carvana, Plug Power is up 8% today. That stock is a zero probably, and yet it's up. That's pretty impressive. When Plug Power is up, then something must be going on, and people are buying stuff because this stock stinks, and I hate it. And it's probably going to go to zero. But at the same time, this was an old school, meme stock, an old school like momentum runner that everybody liked to trade and nobody wanted to own. It's rallying today. Something's up. So there you go.
Hey, yeah, even the crappiest looking charts can get a little bit of a bid there. Yeah, I think the again, I'm speaking kind of Jim Rickards, but I think the bubble has kind of popped on EV. I think the big manufacturers try to go into it, like the Ford Lightning. That was like F-150 Lightning was this big exciting thing, and I think Ford's like, uh-oh, there's the demand ain't there, so they backed away. So it was this very big canary in the coal mine for that industry. But any last words?
Yeah. look for rotation into this week. I think that could be the big theme. I think we're going to see people dumping mega caps. I don't think they're going to crash. Don't get it twisted. But I do think that we're going to see people rotate out of the big stocks that have shown those gains and really push the averages higher. And they're going to rotate into some of the junkier names. I think some of the junk is going to really come off the ocean floor here and start to float. And if that's the case, I want to get involved with it in the short term as responsibly as we possibly can. Now, that also means that we're not going to see the movement in the major averages probably because that stuff really doesn't move, these cap weighted averages, as much as the big dogs do. So that could mean that we kind of have the market all to ourselves in FOMO land when people are like, oh no, the market's down 1% today. And we're like, no, 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 all this stuff under the surface is really moving higher and we can be long that stuff. So just remember that there's going to be that disconnect right there, but we could still see some good opportunities on the long side. And as always, I'll be looking for the AMDs and the other tactical opportunities on the downside as well. So we'll just see what we get. But other than that, I think we're entering in a very interesting trading environment, much better than I thought it would be just a couple weeks ago. So I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, Gunnar, we know we'll be back next Tuesday at 11 for top trades. And luckily for everybody that's in the trading desk, he'll be online tomorrow morning, posting on the blog, posting in the chat, maybe even later today if something's going on. So keep an eye out there. Gunnar, have a good time at the appointment.
See you guys. Thanks for your time.